A Facebook page called Study in France. Become part of that. I sometimes actually go live and then answer your questions, so make sure that you become part of that. Let's start the video. Alright guys, so I'm joined here by Miss Amanda. Why don't you just quickly go ahead and introduce before we get to the topic?
So my name is Amanda Nagel. I am the International Office Manager here at Skema Business School. Our office is in charge of welcoming all of the international students to Skema on the various campuses that we have here in France.
Right. The reason this topic brought me to you is because you handle a lot of international students and especially particularly where I come from. We have one of the important questions which has to be answered before we leave our country because there's a lot of money involved.
Sure.
Right. We want to find a way that there is a way that money which is getting invested is also coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So administrative wise, countries should allow us to stay in the country.
Right.
So that we can contribute back in terms of work and then it pays us.
Yes, of course.
Right?
Yeah, I understand.
So, yeah.
Well, no, it's sure. For international students, if they decide to come to study in France, it's also interesting for the country in order to have that investment. And so one of the key questions is, well, how can I legally stay in France after my studies? Because, you know, when students are coming, they're getting a long-term student visa, which allows them to have the French student residence permit. So the students will have this, and the international office works with the students to help them through those procedures and renewing their permits while they're studying.
Amanda, thanks a lot for that information. I'm going to give you a scenario, right, so that my audience can relate to what you're saying because these bureaucracy can eat your energy, right? Imagine I'm a master's student and I've literally graduated now. I have my degree in my hand. Which says that I'm a graduate from Skema. What's next now?
So what's next for those students? Now that you've graduated, you're going to be requesting what I mentioned before, the APS. The APS is a residence permit which allows students to stay in France for an additional 12 months in order to find a job in France. What's interesting about the APS is that while the international student is looking for that, you know, job that they're looking to sign that contract, they can work part-time at the same time. So it allows them to have a bit of financial stability while they're interviewing with those companies and trying to find that full-time.
So you said about APS.
Yes.
Right? Like in Germany, there is something called job search visa. Is that the same thing? Post-completion, people in Germany, they get for 2 years.
Okay.
What's with France?
So with France, now this is very particular to Indian students. They would be able to get an APS, which would be valid for 12 months.
What is APS, by the way? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. So APS means Autorisation Provisioire de Séjour, which basically means a temporary residence permit, which allows the student to be in France for 1 year in order to find a job and be able to then change status to an employee status.
Right, get it.
However, for Indian students, it's APS can be valid for 1 year, but they have the right to renew it for an additional year. So in total, they could have 2 years of APS.
Right. You said 1 year of APS, 12 months, but then 24 months. They can renew it.
Yeah.
Right. So let's go forward. So I'm graduated and I go ahead and get my APS done.
Yes.
Right? Where do you get this APS done?
So this is done at the Prefecture. The Prefecture is like a police department, and this is where all of the residence permit applications are processed.
Sure. I go to them. I have got my APS. We were just discussing behind the camera also before making this video. I'm allowed to work for 20 hours during APS also.
That's correct. So while the student is interviewing and doing their job search, they could also work part-time in order to, you know, help pay for their housing and living expenses.
Right. Yeah, this is really getting interesting. So let's go forward from here. Imagine they give me APS for 1 year.
Yes.
Right? And I'm working in a McDonald's, doing my thing just to pay my bills here somehow. This 1 year period, I did not get a job until the month of October, from
Okay.
Jan till October.
Yeah, I understand.
And in the 11th month, I get a contract from IBM to do my job,
Yep.
to get my full-time job now.
Okay.
How does the transition go?
Well, in that case, once the student has signed the contract with IBM, for example, they're going to return to the prefecture and they're
Okay.
going to do a new application. It's called a change of status application, because when you are on the APS, you still have the student status in
Right.
France. So once you've signed that contract, now you want to get what's called the salarié status, which means employee.
Right.
And so you're going to submit an application with the prefecture to change your status to employee and get a French residence permit, which would be a French employee residence permit in
Right.
this case.
Makes sense. I do all of that.
Yes.
Right. Now here's also a thing in France is you do get two types of contracts.
That's right.
Right, like two types of full-time contracts. So one contract could be unlimited and the other contract could be limited period. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is very particular to France. You have what's called a CDD contract. A CDD contract means that the contract has a defined end date. So it's possible that the student signs a contract with IBM and it's for 1 year.
Right.
So there's a specific end date to that. That's called a CDD. Otherwise, the other contract, which is really the contract that everyone wants to have, is the CDI contract.
That's a point, right.
And that's the contract which has no end date.
Right. Can you tell me the full form of what's in French?
Oh, right. So it's a CDD. So this is the one with the end date. It's a contrat durée déterminée.
Okay.
It means there's a determined period of time that you'll be working with the company.
Right.
CDI, c'est contrat de durée indéterminée. So there's no end date.
Right, but both have probation periods.
That's correct, yes.
Like, yeah. So,
Right. So that's something to keep in mind as well, is that particularly with the CDI contract, because you know the company is really making a commitment with you if they're giving you a contract with no end date.
Right.
So there is a trial period. There's a 2-month trial period, and so during those 2 months. At the end of that 2-month period, the company will decide, yes, you are the right choice, we continue the contract, or it's by that 2-month period, they'll have to say, no, I'm sorry, but it's not working out.
That's true. All right, thanks a lot for that really important information. So the way after it goes is you pick up either CDI or CDU, whichever contract you have got. Imagine that I've got an unlimited contract, which is CDI, then I just have to keep renewing every time. So authorities only give you contract for 1 year, right?
The residence permit.
The residence permit.
Yes.
They only give you for 1 year, and every time you apply for the new one, you have to start 3 months before.
That's correct. In France, in general, residence permits are valid for 1 year, and you renew it every year for an additional year.
So all the foreigners, they go through this, what you're saying, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
So nobody gets like straight for 5 years, 4 years, nothing.
No,
like
that would be very surprising if you got a five-year residence permit right from the beginning.
Right. Okay.
However, what does tend to happen is that you'll have these 1-year permits, which you're renewing each year. You should start the renewal process each year, maybe 2 or 3 months before the expiration date, just to make sure that you're always in a legal status in France. And generally, maybe after 5 years, the prefecture will decide to give you a 10-year residence permit, which then you're good for at least 10 years. Yeah. So that's good.
Let's talk about the other side of the spectrum. What if I get a CDD, which is limited contract, right? I've got it hired by Accenture, but only for 2 years. Then I only get the contract, the residence permits for 2 years.
That's right. And so
what do I do at the end of that contract?
So what you would like to do if you're keen on staying in France is to, start that job search again, or maybe see with your current company if it may be possible to sign a new CDD.
Right.
Or maybe get that CDI. After 2 years, they see you work very well, and so they'll offer you the CDI contract to keep you on, because, the companies are investing in these students as well with all of their training. So
that's true.
If they find someone who's perfect for the job, you may get that CDI contract afterwards.
Makes sense. So the goal is to get a CDI.
Yes.
And
that's what everyone in France wants to get. Yep.
All right. On this note, I would like to say goodbye. Thanks a lot, Amanda, for joining me here. If you guys have any questions regarding the admissions at Skema, reach out to them at their admissions office straight on their website. And I'll see you guys next time.